The house changed the day my mother married Rick. It wasn't the furniture or the new routines. It was the silence from the basement, where Rick's 23-year-old son, Brad, spent his days. A silence that felt heavy, like something waiting. For 2 months, the peace held. Mom was happier than I'd seen her in years. Rick fixed the leaky faucet. I kept to my upstairs sanctuary, a space guarded by a solid lock, protecting my world of sketchbooks, paints, and the few pieces of my grandmother's jewelry I couldn't bear to part with.
Then the violations began. Subtle, deniable crimes against my privacy. A sketch pad left at a wrong angle. The faint depression of a body on my comforter. One Tuesday, I found my underwear drawer slightly ajar, the contents subtly disturbed. A cold wire of fear threaded down my spine. I became a warden of my own room, locking the door every time I left, even for a glass of water. "You're treating my son like a criminal in his own home," Rick said at dinner, his voice a calm, reasonable wall. Brad just stared at his plate, a faint smirk playing on his lips. My mother's eyes pleaded with me from across the table. "Please, don't make waves."
The jiggling of the doorknob at 3 a.m. shattered that fragile peace. I saw the shadow of feet blocking the light from the hall. "Just seeing if you're okay," Brad's voice slurred from the other side. When I told my mother, she repeated Rick's excuse like a mantra. "He's a sleepwalker, honey. He doesn't know what he's doing." The final act of war came when I returned from my shift at the library. My door was simply gone. Only the naked hinges remained, gaping like a wound in the wall. Rick stood there, a screwdriver in his hand, Brad lurking behind him. "Privacy is a privilege," Rick stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "Doors create division. If you have nothing to hide, you don't need one." My mother was still at work. I was defenseless. That night, I changed in the bathroom, my skin crawling. 4 times, Brad's silhouette paused in my open doorway, a dark, watching stain against the hall light. Sleep was impossible. The next day, I smuggled my valuables to my friend Jess's house. Then I went to war with whimsy. I bought a tension rod and a shower curtain so violently cheerful it felt like a scream, cartoon unicorns vomiting rainbows. I hung it as my new door. Rick tore it down in a fury, calling it disrespectful. So I bought another, Disney princesses. He destroyed that one too. I made it a campaign. 5 curtains in 7 days, each more garish than the last. It was a ridiculous, fluttering rebellion, but it was all I had. Brad, emboldened, began using my room as his own. I'd find my closet rifled, my bedspread wrinkled from where he'd sat. My mother argued with Rick, but he was immovable. Apologized to Brad first. My salvation arrived in the form of my Aunt Lauren. She took one look at the doorway and her face went pale with rage. "Are you out of your mind?" she hissed at Rick. "You remove a teenage girl's door with a grown man in the house?" She threatened to call to social services. Under pressure, Rick reinstalled the door, but removed the lock. A compromise. The next day, Brad accidentally tried to walk in while I was changing. My mother saw it. She saw his smirk, his slow retreat. Rick's excuses about accidents died in the air, unanswered. Something in her eyes finally shifted from doubt to a slow, dawning horror. That's when I stopped fighting fair. I began sleeping at Jess's, but left a decoy, a speaker under my pillows, playing a loop of soft breathing sounds. Like clockwork, twice a night, Brad's shadow would haunt my doorway. Next, I enlisted my friend Mike. We staged a convincing relationship, holding hands on the couch, just to watch Brad's jealous glare from the stairs. Then, the masterstroke. Mike and I staged a loud conversation in the living room. "I'm just so tired of my stuff being moved," I said, voice carrying. "I'm thinking of getting a nanny cam for my room, just for peace of mind." The effect was instantaneous. That night, Brad stormed upstairs in a panic, ranting to Rick about cameras and invasions of his privacy. Rick confronted me, red-faced. "You can't put cameras in a shared home." The room went still. My mother, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. Her voice was terrifyingly quiet. "Rick," she said, "why would Brad care about a camera in her room unless he plans on being in there?" The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock. I watched the truth detonate behind my mother's eyes. Upstairs in her room, the lock clicking shut, a sound I hadn't heard in months, I showed her the evidence on my phone. A dated log, 19 entries. The drawer, the shadow at 3 a.m., the 4 passes by the open door. As she read, the color drained from her face. A single shattered sob escaped her. "I was so afraid of being alone again," she whispered, tears falling freely. "I chose his comfort over your safety. I am so sorry. I'm thinking of getting a nanny cam for my room, just for peace of mind." When we descended, she was a different woman. Steel had replaced uncertainty. "You and Brad need to leave, tonight." Rick blustered. "This is my house." "Then I'll call the police," she said, holding up my phone, "and show them this." The fight left him. He saw the unblinking resolve in her gaze. Within the hour, they were throwing belongings into duffel bags, muttering about betrayal. The front door closed with a final, echoing thud. The quiet that settled was profound. My mother wept, apologies tumbling out. I finally said, "I need you to stop saying sorry and start helping me feel safe." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Tell me what you need." "A lock, one that can't be removed." "Done." The next day, a locksmith installed a heavy-duty deadbolt on my door and locks on my second-story windows. The solid clunk of the bolt sliding home was the first music I'd heard in weeks. Rick's pleading voicemails piled up, angry, then sorrowful, always defending Brad. We listened to them together, dissecting the manipulation. My Aunt Lauren returned, a fierce ally, and helped us purge every trace of them from the house, changing every external lock. My mother set a non-negotiable condition for any reconciliation. Brad had to be gone for good, and Rick had to fully acknowledge the danger he'd enabled. It took weeks of strained counseling sessions, but Rick finally broke. In a therapist's office, he admitted, "I was so focused on protecting my son, I failed to protect my stepdaughter. Removing that door, it was a catastrophic failure." He moved back in months later, a quieter, older-seeming man. Brad remained exiled. The first time Rick knocked on my new, fortified door and waited for my come in, I felt a sliver of something that wasn't fear. Therapy with my mother was raw. I told her the trust was shattered. She cried, admitting her failure. We rebuilt it brick by brick, her actions becoming her apology, backing me unconditionally, enforcing boundaries with Rick, never wavering on Brad's banishment. Months later, I found myself laughing with Jess and Mike in my room. The pile of absurd shower curtains was a relic in my closet. I'd slept through the night for a week straight. I learned a brutal, essential lesson. Your intuition is your first and best alarm system. When it screams that something is wrong, it's not paranoia, it's recognition. And sometimes you have to become your own hero, your own fortress, and your own voice, even if you have to speak through the silent, defiant rebellion of cartoon unicorns.